right, well, hello again, and welcome to the OnStage Colorado Podcast. I'm Alex Miller, and here once again with arts reporter Toni Tresca on this Saturday morning. Hey, Toni.
Hey there, Alex. How's it going?
Good. So, yeah, we're recording on July 13th. So, as usual, we'll be going over the latest live theater news, any shows we've seen recently, and a look at what's coming up around the state on stages. Plus, we have a special season so far roundup of what we kind of thought were the best shows of 2024 through the first 6 months of the year. So that's a lot of fun. And then later in the episode, I have an interview I did with Michael Querio, who's the artistic director at the Rocky Mountain Repertory Theatre up in Grand Lake. So they kicked off their season in May, and they just got up their third show. So I wanted to ask him, what's up? Get a little skinny about the program up there over the years. So stick around for that, and yeah, buckle up because we have a ton of shows we're going to talk about.
Oh, indeed. There is no shortage of shows for us that are out there playing that we've seen, and then of course between all the shows that we're going to discuss that has happened, previously in 2024. There's a lot to get through.
Past, present, and future today on OnStage Colorado. So, we did have a little bit of a lull over the 4th of July. You were on a field trip to the Heartland, which I was curious to hear about, but you don't have to share the details if you want to. But you were in Oklahoma, right, over the 4th?
I was in Oklahoma with some family there. It was my sister's birthday, and so we celebrated there. We were in like this nice cabin in Oklahoma. There, it was very pretty. I can't say it was any less hot there than it was here, but it was very relaxing.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I was just kind of hanging around here, but we had. We were kind of a little bit caught up on shows, but there are some openings coming up that we'll definitely talk about. So, but last night I saw Darkfield, which is a Denver Center off-center production that it's kind of reminiscent of what was the one they did earlier this year with the NASA, the space station.
Oh, yeah, Space Explorers.
Space Explorers, yeah. So it's kind of like that. It was more like an installation or, for lack of a better term, like a ride, or like a feature like you would go to, like at, say, like a Universal Studios or something. So the thing about Darkfield is it's basically they have 3 shipping containers sitting in a dusty parking lot in Rhino on Larimer Street. And you go in and you are completely immersed in darkness. And there's 3 different experiences. One of is called Coma, one's called Flight, and one is called Seance. So there's kind of 3 different, and you can either do all 3 or you can do just one at a time. And so I think it's only $25 to just do one of them. So it's fairly reasonable to pop in there and check it out. And it'll be there for, I don't know, a month or 2, I think.
And did you end up doing all 3? Did you just do the one?
We did, yeah. So, I mean, I figured, my duty as a journalist that I needed to do all 3 experiences. So,
good on you, Alex, journalist of class.
I will say that even though, so it was basically the hottest day of the year to crawl into a shipping container. And even though they're air conditioned, I think the air conditioners were having a hard time keeping up. So, like the first one my wife and I, Jen, went into was Coma, and it was hard to focus on anything other than how freaking hot we both were, and so that was even without that, I think that was kind of the lesser of the 3. And then there's one called Flight where you're actually you go in, it looks like an airplane, you're sitting in airplane seats, and that was pretty interesting. And then the third one was Seance, where you're in a big long table and there's a seance in pitch black. And I would say I guess I was a little underwhelmed by it. I was, and I think when I mentioned Universal Studios or like you think about it like something you would do at Disney, I feel like that's the measure that you kind of have to, if you're doing something like that, this is what people are used to. People are expecting to be like really wowed by those types of experiences where there's smells, there's sounds, there might be water squirting out or, all kinds of motion, things like that. And, they had a little bit of that, but, not a lot. And I don't know. I wouldn't say, don't go, but I was definitely not super amazed by it. But, I think other people look like they were having a good time.
Well, that's That's good. I'm trying to go to this a little bit later. I was supposed to be there last night with you, but I ended up at an interview that I was doing ended up running a little bit long, so I had to miss it. So I'm hoping to reschedule though.
Okay. So what did you see? Did you see anything in the last few days?
I've seen two things recently. So the most recent show that I've seen, public performance, was Killer Summer Camp by Elevate Immersive over at Zeppelin Station, which is in North Denver. It's this food court that you walk into, and you think you're in the wrong place at first. I certainly did. But then I saw all these, like a couple of signs and all these people sitting on steps leading up to this sign that said Killer Summer Camp in all red. And then we got led up the stairs by this very preppy cheerleader who came out to greet us at the door. And then we were upstairs. They had converted the entire upstairs thing into like a 1999 summer camp. And so it was actually the show, they had done it once before. They did it last summer. So this is the revival. And it was a really fun experience. You walk in, you're able to interact with the actors. You can get a drink over at the bar. It's a little bit less interactive than, let's say, something like Audacious Theater Company, where you're kind of more expected to participate. This is a little bit more like a mystery. So the only participation that you're doing is kind of, if you want to, solving the murder that happens at the summer camp. And there's all these clues that are around. If you do want to actually solve the mystery, you actually have to collaborate with the other people in the experience to kind of get all of the information that's shared between you. So I actually had a really fun time. A lot of immersive things that I go to don't always actually have that interactivity with the other audience members. And I thought this one really nailed that. And the set design was also super, super fun upstairs in that space.
Oh, that sounds great.
So I highly recommend that. They've got, this one's running through the rest of July, and then they've got a big summer blowout party that they're doing at the end of the month. And then their next experience is a Bridgerton-inspired immersive experience.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's going to be in August, also in that space. So check out Elevate Immersive's website for more information on their upcoming shows. They're a pretty cool organization. They've just kind of been around for just about a year now.
Yeah, I just added them to our list of theater organizations. I did not have them down here, so we need to make sure we get their stuff on our calendar and get up there to see their shows.
Absolutely.
What else?
And then the second thing I attended was a run-through of a performance of Elizabeth I in Her Own Words, which is a one-woman show about Queen Elizabeth starring Tammy Megerlin, who is a CU professor, and it's directed by Flying Solo's producing artistic director, Penny Cole, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in our headliners section.
All right.
Because that's one of my headliners.
All right. And then what about coming up this weekend? Well, it's Saturday already when we're talking, so.
I know, it's a very busy theater weekend for me. I'm going to be hitting up Grounded, which is Ann Penner's one-person show by BETC over at the Dairy Arts Center about a drone strike operator and kind of her ethical dilemmas. I've got Legally Blonde over at the Pace Center by Sasquatch Productions, which I've heard is excellent, so I'm looking forward to seeing. And then tonight, we're both going to see Merry Wives of Windsor over at the Colorado Shakespeare Festival in Boulder.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Our reviewer, Alice Caterlin, was not super thrilled. She thought it was a little over the top on the slapstick, but I'm okay with that. So I'm sure it'll be fun. So
absolutely, and I just heard read an alternative review from the John Moore online on Facebook, and where he said that it was very merry, and he specifically called out Sean Scruggin's and Jacob Drest's performances online.
They're both so great.
That just made me even more excited to see it. So
yeah. So did he actually write a review?
Not a real review. He wrote it in the Facebook comment.
Okay. John doesn't like writing reviews very much.
No.
Or at least so he claims, because he wrote plenty back in the day. So, All right. Anything in the mailbag this week?
Yeah, so it's not an official letter, but I was chatting with our recent guest and friend of the podcast, Betty Hart, a little bit earlier this week, and she noted that she had shared our episode about the Henry Awards with the Henry Award Committee, and they had listened to our episode about the Henrys that we did on June 23rd, and quote, they have heard our comments about how long the ceremony is. And so though Betty didn't get into any specifics, she did say that this year's ceremony is going to be tighter, and so I'll have to report back a little bit later on what changes are made to kind of tighten the ceremony up, because I will be actually attending this year on behalf of Denver Westward to report about the ceremony and take some photos of the celebration.
Okay, so that the ceremony is coming up on Monday, July 29th. So they will usually share the winners with me before. So I'll have them scheduled to go up as soon as I'm able to. So they'll be on our site on Monday night, 29th, so you can see who won. So it's always an interesting time of year to see what the Henry Awards are, and we talked about it at length in a couple of our previous podcasts on the nominations. So, all right,
totally.
Well, the main topic we wanted to talk about today was this 2024 so far. It was, I would say, a pretty good year for Colorado theater.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty strong so far. There's quite a few really strong original plays on the docket, and then some really strong musicals from companies as well. So a lot of really interesting stuff to kind of talk through.
Yeah, so we kind of polled our OnStage Colorado Review Crew and got some inputs from some of our other reviewers out there. So as you may recall, we did our very first awards program last January, the OnStage Colorado Awards, or the OSCAs as we call them. And we've been taking notes, making our lists in preparation for the 2025 awards. So think of this as a little bit of a preview, no guarantee. But...
Yeah, just because we mention it here does not mean that it's a shoo-in for the Oscars, but you never know. Maybe you'll see a couple of these at the end of the year.
Yeah, so in no particular order, here's what we think were some of the best shows of 2024 so far in Colorado theater. So one of them was 237 Virginia Avenue from Local Theater. This was, I think, one that both really impressed us. It's an original or new play by David Myers, and it starred Jacob Dresch and Lawrence Hecht. And it was done in the Savoy Theater. It was just fantastic. Great play, great acting, great staging and set, and just altogether really well done.
Yeah, I really agree. That was also just a really expertly designed show in that space. The Savoy, one of my favorite parts about attending a performance there is that it's such a versatile space, and they really used it in a really kind of unique way to put you in the action of that play. So really special one for sure.
For sure. And another original play, Jukebox for the Algonquin at Miners Alley. This was Paul Stroley's play, and he was also in the play. He came out from, I think, Chicago's, his usual stomping ground. Had a really touching play, about folks in an old folks' home. Really great performances by Edith Weiss in particular was just like so great. And Chris Kendall, as always. And then Abby Apple Bose and Arlene Hicks, who I think had been off stage for a while, was fantastic as kind of the matronly overseer of the of the place. But she was no Nurse Ratched. She had some of those aspects at first, you thought, but her heart was in the right place. So really neat show.
Yeah, great, and really just a strong directorial outing from Len Mateo, who's the artistic director over at Miners Alley.
Absolutely.
He and Paul Stroley go back. They've been friends since the 80s when they met in college. And so it was really cool to kind of see them working together in this capacity and kind of firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. And Paul is a great guy, and also I think he's having some decent success with getting that show being brought to other theaters around the country. So look for Jukebox for the Algonquin at another theater near you, not in Colorado. School of Rock. This was, I think, the first outing from Veritas Productions at the Pace Center. Fantastic production, and it's such a fun show. I love that story. I love the movie. And I thought they did a great job casting it, and the sound, the music. It's a tough show to put together. And of course, Miners Alley is going to be doing that soon too, so we'll be able to compare and contrast. But yeah, the Veritas production was great at Pace.
Totally. Yeah. Loved Caleb Reed in the lead role as Dewey Fenn. And then it was all of the kids that they got on stage. I think that's partly why it's so impressive of the production is all the kids they assembled were local kids taught by the Pickering Academy, and they were playing the music live on stage and just absolutely killing it every night. So I think that's
Yes, and the girl that played April, who's kind of like, Miranda Cosgrove played her in the movie. She was great. So, fun show. Another fun show, Urinetown at Town Hall Arts Center, an older show, but man, what a great ensemble they had for that play or musical. And I just really enjoyed it. And I hadn't seen it before, even though Urinetown's been around for years. I really enjoyed it. So another great ensemble musical production from Town Hall.
Totally. And I want to give a special shout out there too. I think what really helped make that was all the live musicians that they had over there, led by Dan Graver. The music in that sounded absolutely incredible, and it was just heightened by really sharp direction by Robert Michael Sanders, and then of course the choreography over there was super duper sharp.
So absolutely. And Tony is the kind of guy that saves every playbill. So I see you can whip out playbills for all these shows we're talking about.
I'm not just that knowledgeable of all the people in here and everything that's happened. I am consulting my playbills.
Yes, I know. I used to save them, and I used to save tickets. And at one point I was like, I just can't keep up with it all. So another fantastic show was Art at Aurora Fox. Just three great actors, three great Colorado actors, Andrew Uhlenhop, Gareth Sachs, and Matthew Schneck. Really great.
This is
I just loved it.
I'm so disappointed that I missed this one. This is my most regretted production that I missed this year. Everybody who I've talked to has just raved about it, and so I believe you. Every word you're saying.
Yep, a really good one. Another one was Cost of Living at Curious Theater. This was a really interesting play about a young woman who comes in to help a disabled man. And there's another story about a man who's caring for his wife who's disabled, and a really, really touching story, really highlighted the humanity of these people who are often, kind of overlooked in society, and really, really did a great job of character study in that. So wonderful production from Curious there.
And that was a co-collaboration there with the Family Theater Company as well, who was, I imagine, incredibly instrumental in consulting on the element of disability in that play. And it was really a couple of really strong performances. I really liked Jamie Rizzo as John, and then Valentino Fittipaldi as Jess, who is that she is the nurse who is kind of caring for John, who is the already disabled man who you just mentioned.
Yep. And then Impossible Things from the Catamounts, which we've talked about quite a bit on the pod, but I mean, wonderful immersive production at the Museum for Outdoor Arts over there by Fiddler's Green, done by the Catamounts, and just all around great outdoor immersive production that we both just loved.
Mm-hmm. Another really strong production is actually an original play written. It was Cheyenne. This was performed over at the People's Building in Aurora. It was written by Cipriano Ortega, whom we had on the podcast to discuss it. It was produced by Controlled Group Productions, and it was this really interesting 4-person play about the kind of concessions that artists make for commercial viability. If you'll use your identity to move up in the world at the expense of others within your community, and I just thought it was a really powerful debut from Cipriano there, and then featured 2 incredible performances. Magdalena Luna is in her supporting performance over there. She's playing this art dealer marketer she's like vaping the whole time, talking super fast, and just super funny. And then Ileana Lucero Barron is playing the lead character, Cheyenne, that artist who is grappling with whether to sell out or not, and while dealing with her aging father who is suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia, and I'm not sure which one it was specifically, but something with memory. And it's this really gutting play. It's super emotional, and I was really glad to be able to catch it this year.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed that. But yeah, Ileana is one of those actors who I just always just so good. Everything she does, she brings it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Another company that always brings it is Theater Artibus and their production of The Bluebird earlier this year. So this was starring Buba Bastivilli. I believe I pronounced that wrong, but please feel free to reach out if I butchered it. So it was a mime performance kind of inspired by a poem. It was about the experience of immigrants who have taken flight to other lands. And I just thought it was this really striking piece. There's all these really cool lighting moments, and it's so silent. And Booba's performance and facial expressions are so striking. You saw this one, didn't you, Alex?
Really cool projections and really great music from... oh God, the band has this really interesting name. It's like the
Homo Spouses.
The Homo Spouses, yeah, really, really cool music.
Yeah.
And very different from the Pastisserie, which was the last Theater Artibus production that we just kind of raved about, because this was a one-hander for one thing, with the Boba out there, a neat one for sure, and also really, it was based on this Charles Bukowski poem about the bluebird, and really affecting and cool show.
Totally. I definitely get a feeling we'll be hearing about that one in the Oscars later this year. And there were so many good productions out of Curious this season. You already spotlighted Cost of Living. Kaladwada was also quite strong, but I think my favorite production out of Curious this season is actually their one that they kicked it off with. It was Truth Be Told by William Cameron. This is a two-hander starring Jada Susanna Dixon and Karen Slack. It is a really powerful piece. Jada is playing, she's playing a journalist who is coming to interview the mother of someone who has allegedly committed a mass shooting. And they're having this conversation over the course of a few days, just 3 days that they're sitting together for this conversation. And it is, I will never forget Karen's performance, particularly in that final scene as she just breaks down raw on stage. It's just so visceral and real, and I just felt it in my soul. The set design by Caitlin Eyre was also quite impressive, as was Jason Duckett's sound design that was just kind of ever present and looming and creeping into the background. So that play is one that will really, really be sticking with me for a while. On a totally different note, I also really liked The Glass Menagerie. This was over at Vintage, directed by Bernie Cardell for his 150th production in theater. And this was quite an effort. It's a four-hander with a great cast. It was in their smaller space, but the set design over there by Don Fuller was absolutely gorgeous, kind of absurd, absurdist in there, and just featured some really, really strong performances, particularly by the ever impressive Emma Messenger as Amanda, and one of my favorite actors on the town, Matthew Murray. He played Tom, and he's really just been kind of on the up and up. He was in The Cherry Orchard last year, The Inheritance over at Vintage Theater, and he's got a couple more shows up on the docket later this year that I'm excited to check out as well.
Yeah, definitely heard a lot of great things about The Glass Menagerie at Vintage.
Two musicals that I absolutely loved for totally different reasons were Crazy for You over at Candlelight. This is kind of a throwback tap happy musical about this theater producer who is about to get bought out by this big shot who wants to turn this theater into a financially viable thing for business or whatnot. And it's just this really heartwarming, fun story over there. Candlelight does just, this is kind of their bread and butter, is these classic musicals. And Steve Wilson directed with the help of choreographer Shauna Walker over there, and just absolutely, they made a full meal out of this production. And then the other one that I liked was Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. This was over at the Arvada Center. This was an immersive musical. It's newer. It's telling the story of war and peace, but not the full story, only 70 pages that are very interesting and engaging. And it was a lot of fun. I think that Lynn Collins, the director and artistic director over there, did a really interesting job of transforming that space as well to really invite you into Russia in this time period. So, and then my final one that I really enjoyed was Betsy's What the Constitution Means to Me, starring Jessica Robley in that titular role. It's just this woman kind of working through her mixed feelings about the Constitution. And I mean, after all the political turmoil that's going on in this country, it was just a really refreshing piece to kind of get to sit down and have like an honest conversation about America and the Constitution. And the whole thing ends with a live debate as to whether or not we should abolish the Constitution. And on my night, we did not vote to abolish the Constitution.
That's nice.
We decided to keep it, which
Okay.
I hear ended up being the more common choice. But somebody was there on the night when they actually did vote to abolish the Constitution, and apparently that crowd was real ruckus and had a good time. So
There was no option
happen.
to rewrite it. It was either keep it or kill it.
So that was what you could advocate. In the debate, you would advocate for that. You'd be like, we should get rid of it and revise it. But that was a pretty difficult pitch because it wasn't always guaranteed. The other side of that argument was you don't know what it's going to be replaced with. It could be so much worse. And that was
That's
a pretty
true.
salient argument for our audience member, particularly given the state of one political party in this country that I won't name, but you can fill it in.
Yeah, let's start with getting rid of the Second Amendment, but that's just me. All right. Okay, so our reviewer, Susan Harper, weighed in with just one entry for this so far, Emma at the Denver Center, which was one that I know you were kind of lukewarm on. So I didn't see it. So what was your take on Emma?
I would love to see the scenic design, but I just thought it was a very weak script, and the performances were incredibly hammy and just kind of over the top. It definitely felt like they were just kind of repeating the same joke over and over again for like 2.5 hours. It was not my cup of tea.
Okay. Well, and also our reviewer, Eric Fitzgerald, weighed in with a couple. So first was Clink Clink from 2 Cent Lion, a beautiful play by Kevin Douglas about these two girls who grow into women and have, they kind of fall in and out of love, and really, really nice. And what a really, I guess it was pretty much his debut play that he'd written, or at least a full length play that I'm aware of. And then, of course, 2 Cent came back with Josie's Diner this summer. Which everybody all liked as well. So, and then also, this is another one that everybody was like, holy crap, this was fantastic. Misery at Miners Alley, with
totally
sort of boffo performances by Emma Messenger. And who was the guy that played the writer?
That's Torsten Hillhouse. He played Paul.
Okay. Yeah. So, everybody was talking about that one. Also, Lightning Thief at Aurora Fox, which, also ended with a bang when they their final evening performance anyway ended with them relighting the Fox sign out there after a big restoration project. So that one had special meaning for the theater as well. Sweeney Todd up at Stage Door Theater in Conifer. This is a theater we love to call out as a little gem up in the mountains outside of Denver. So great production up there that Eric just kind of raved about. And then Othello 2024 for it. Firehouse features a fantastic performance, Everybody is Saying, by Kelly Uhlenhop in the role of Iago and TJ Jackson as Othello. So that one is still up, and you can still go and see that one. I think it's got another week or two. And then in Colorado Springs, reviewer Judith wanted to mention Othello, also another Othello production, I think more of a classic Othello.
That one starred Lavore Addison in the titular role. Really, really strong performance.
And so that was at the Ent Center in Colorado Springs. And then also the Springs Ensemble Theater production of Proof was another one that she called out. So I mean, that is by no means an exhaustive list, but man, that's a lot of great shows in just 6 months in Colorado.
Yeah, and that's not even all of them. That's just the ones that we were able to narrow down. There's a ton of other really good or great productions, but these are just the ones that we thought were most excellent, stuck with us and the rest of the review team.
Right. And, there were some we didn't see. So
totally.
Yeah. So, we'll do this for reals in January when we do the Oscars for all of 2024 and when it's cold out again. I'm looking forward to some cold weather as we go through our really, really hot period here. But well, great. This was a great roundup. And I think it really kind of illustrates just how blessed we are by all this great theater going on in Colorado today. So, we are going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere because when we come back, we'll be talking about even more shows. The Colorado headliners are our top 10 for the next couple of weeks that we're excited about seeing or encouraging you to see wherever you are. OnStage Colorado is sponsored by the Colorado Fine Arts Center at Colorado College. Tickets for their upcoming season are on sale now and include Dial M for Murder, The City Dog and the Prairie Dog, In Her Bones, and The Naked Mole Rat Gets Dressed. More at fac.colorado.college.edu. Support also comes from the Boulder Ensemble Theater Company, BETC, whose upcoming production of Grounded stars Ann Penner as a fighter pilot in the U.S. Air Force who's assigned to the Chair Force in a bunker outside Las Vegas. The show runs through July 21st at the Dairy Arts Center in Boulder. Tickets at BETC.org. All right, we're back. The Colorado Headliners is the thing where we conjure up a list of the top 10 or so shows we're excited about seeing. And sometimes it's events like a new play festival or things like that. So my first one is, wanted to mention Once Upon a Mattress at the Arts Hub in Lafayette. So this is kind of a classic old musical, but it's actually a pretty good one that it's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember it being quite a fun show. And so that one's running through July 21st in Lafayette at the Arts.
Yeah. My first headliner is The Second City Comedian Rhapsody. This is a touring production from Chicago by their Second City up there, which has been doing comedy and improv shows for over 60 years. And so this is a review of some of their most iconic sketches and songs that they'll be performing at the Garner Galleria Theater at the Denver Center Performing Arts Complex from July 17th through August 1st.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. I will be there on Saturday on the 20th, so looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm checking this one out on the 18th, so I'm excited to see this one. I just was chatting with somebody who actually, they're a local Coloradan who's currently working at the Second City in Chicago. Her name's Zelda. She's up in their box office at the moment. And so shout out to you, Zelda. You're living the dream.
All right.
And doing that improv.
So my next one, we've already talked about Grounded at Boulder Ensemble Theater Company with Ann Penner. This is running through July 21st at the Dairy. And if you listen to NPR or CPR, you will have heard, so Mark Reagan, who's the executive director there at BETC, has really been putting a lot of ads on CPR for this one. And it's like, I feel like I have to go see it after having heard the ad so many times. But yeah, I think, and the funny thing is that Mark actually wrote a review for us a few years ago when Ann did the first iteration of this show and raved about it. And that's why he wanted to, bring it back. So you can see that review on our website already. But I'm sure that Ann is going to come back with even more amazing stuff. So I think I'm going to get out and see that one as well.
This show is also in the Boulder area, but it's not a conventional theater production. This is just something that I think anybody who likes musical theater, drama, or acting in any capacity might really enjoy. It's the Broadway Rave. So it's a dance party featuring show tunes and musical theater that invites you to dress up as your favorite Broadway characters and come sing along to your favorite hits, all while dancing with other musical theater freaks on the dance floor. So this is going to be for one night only, July 19th in Boulder at the Fox Theater. I'm going to be doing my absolute best to get out there because this just sounds like a blast.
That sounds right up your alley. Sounds like a lot of fun.
I was like, it's just the only time I will not get any shade if I ask the DJ to put on some like Heathers or something.
All right. Well, speaking of big musicals, Chicago, Merely Players down in Durango are doing this one through August 3rd. So if you happen to be in Southern Colorado, that's one to definitely check out. I think Merely Players has been at it for a long time. They know what they're doing, and Chicago's always a fun one to see.
This is also a classical piece. It's the Vagina Monologues. It's going to be over at the Theater Company of Lafayette at the Arapahoe Center in Lafayette. It's written by Eve Insler and directed by three women, Hannah Richards, Christina Twigg, and Madge Montgomery. The play honors female sexuality in all of its complexities and mystery and gives you real voice to real women's deepest fantasies and fears. So this one is a limited run. It's only there for 2 weekends, but you can catch it from July 19th through July 28th.
All right. Always a popular one. This next one, I was looking at some of the production photos that came over from this, and I was like, oh my God, this looks like a fantastic show. It's Emperor of the Moon at the Ent Center, TheaterWorks production. Our reviewer, April Tick, will be there. It's running through August 4th, and it says it's a restoration comedy turned on its head, and it's outdoors on the lawn there at the beautiful $1 Ent Center. So that would be, as long as it doesn't hail or something, would be a great night out at the theater al fresco.
Yeah. That one looked like a lot of fun. The production photos were just so silly. There's so much color. There's so much movement and action. So yeah, I was like, that one looks like a lot of fun. If you're looking for a different kind of fun, maybe a stand-up funny, I've got an event for you. It's Colonizing America, an evening of stand-up with TJ. So after touring all of Europe with his stand-up act, New York City comedian TJ is coming here to Denver for one night only to talk about his immigration journey to the U.S., religion, languages, and why America might be ending its run as the world's most powerful empire. So if you want to get some thought-provoking stand-up, this one's going to be over at the Bug Theater for one night only in Denver on July 20th.
That sounds great. Yep. And my last one is 12th Night at the Telluride Town Park Stage. So, Telluride Theater they don't have like a super busy schedule through the year, but they always have they usually do a Shakespeare. I haven't been to one, but it looks like a beautiful setting. And I think tickets were like $40. They weren't, for Telluride. That's probably cheaper than a cup of coffee down there. So that's outside of the Town Park Stage through July 28th, 12th Night.
I like that coffee joke, Alex. It is expensive out there in those mountain towns.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy. So my final headliner for this week is one I mentioned up at the top of the pod. This is Elizabeth I in her own words. So this play has been around for a little while now. Tammy, she plays the lead, playing Elizabeth. It toured a 2-person version of the show for many years, but recently adapted it to be just a 1-person show. They performed the show earlier this year at the Denver Fringe Festival, and then they're going to be doing another local performance before heading to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in Scotland.
Cool.
So that local performance is July 21st at the Center for Musical Arts in Lafayette. And then after they do that performance, so they're going to have some live music there from local musician Rick Pruitt. You can ask them questions, talk about their journey, the evolution of the show after seeing it. And I sat in at a rehearsal for it, and it's a really, really affecting show. It's using actual letters and quotes from Elizabeth's life to kind of textually tell this story. It almost feels like an exit interview with her, where she is telling you the real truth about what happened in her reign. And so after they perform locally, they're going to New York City to perform July 27th through the 28th, and then off to Scotland for Edinburgh Fringe with previews August 2nd and 3rd, and then running August 5th through the 17th.
Wow. I think we should do a field trip to New York and then on to Edinburgh to see this show. And others. Yeah,
if anybody wants to sponsor that, please feel free to reach out. We'll happily take it. There are a couple of Denver shows who are actually coming who are going to be at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So like in addition to this show, Band the Musical, written and composed by local April Alsop, is also going to be heading out there. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Band the Musical, tune into our episode next week where I interview April.
All right. That's awesome. Great. Well, that is, so that's the near term great stuff coming up. We did the sort of previous great stuff that we saw through the last of the year. And then thinking just a little bit of ahead, we've got, we'll have a review of Candlelight's production of High School Musical. which we would have had, except apparently they had a power outage the other night. They got like 20 minutes into the show and boom, no power. And they sent everybody home. So bummer for that, but I'm sure they'll recover. And so our reviewer, Carrie Redmond, will be at that one. The aforementioned Merry Wives of Windsor is up on our site now, a review from Alice. And we will be comparing notes when we see it tonight to see if we agree with her sort of less than thrilled review. And she'll also be covering, she'll have some reviews of a couple of shows at Central City Opera House, Street Scene, and Girls of the Golden West up pretty soon. And then up in Summit County, Karen Mason will be at the Amish Project, which is at the Silco Theater there in Silverthorne. And then also in Summit County, Cabaret is at Backstage Theater, and our reviewer, Kim Nicoletti, who she hasn't written for the site in a while, but she's an old friend of mine. She is a really seasoned journalist who lives up in Silverthorne, and also she edits like Aspen Magazine and a bunch of other things for the newspaper group up there. So I'm excited to have her go check that out. And I know the Backstage is really excited about it. Just and also it's their 50th anniversary year, which is amazing. Because
congratulations.
That's awesome. 50 years. As you mentioned, Second City at Garner Galleria, I will be at that one, so I'll have a review of that, and then Eric will be at the aforementioned Vagina Monologues at Theater Company of Lafayette, so we'll have a review of that. All right, so hold on. I'm going to have my interview with Michael Querio, Artistic Director at Rocky Mountain Repertory Theatre, and stay tuned for that. Well, we're here with Michael Querio, who's the Executive Artistic Director for Rocky Mountain Repertory Theatre. Michael, thanks so much for joining the OnStage Colorado podcast today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't met before, and I know you have been there for a long time, so we'll get into that in a little bit. But I know you just opened your third show this summer, and so you must be excited and probably a little tired. But
yeah, that's exactly it. It's a long 6 weeks for us to do 3 shows in a row, 2 weeks on each show. And you're right. When that 6 weeks is over, we are feeling pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just opened Come From Away, and that joins Kinky Boots and A Music Man. And then a little later in the summer, or late in the summer, you'll be doing the Tony Bennett retrospective, which is I Left My Heart. So, exactly. Well, how is it all looking? How's the gang this year?
The gang is great. It's a tough period to get through for all of us, the actors, the designers, directors, technicians. So far, everybody's doing great. And they're bringing great energy to the stage. I watched The Music Man last night, and it's great. It's really a pleasure.
It's a great show. And kind of always a crowd pleaser. So, well, before we talk a little bit more about this season, I wanted to just do a little bit of background because, not everybody has made it up to Grand Lake to see RMRT in action. So this organization goes back to the 1960s, I think, right?
Yeah, the founders founded the theater in 1967. That's Dave and Audrey Thompson. It's unbelievable, like what that family, like where they've gone and where that first year's company has gone. Peter Friedman, who was in the original company of Ragtime and was just in Succession. And, David Hasselhoff was in one of our first companies. And even David Thompson's son, David Thompson III, is currently a Broadway book writer and has worked with Kander and Ebb on a bunch of shows. So, there's a lot of fame that came from those early years. But the Thompsons ended up in Grand Lake, loved the town, founded the theater. For 1 or 2 years, the theater moved to Colorado Springs, and I'm not exactly sure why. That was well before my time. And then since 1995, the theater's been in Grand Lake, and we used to do our performances in the old community house in the middle of town, rented it from the town of Grand Lake. And in 2011, we opened our own theater, a brand new theater space, just down the street. And it's probably the biggest building in town now. Maybe the library is just as big. And so it's a pleasure to have our own space. 10 years in the theater.
How many seats does that space have?
300 seats.
Okay, so good sized theater.
Yeah.
And so you've been there since '95. And I was looking at your bios. You started out as a music director and
It
piano
just
player
froze
for a
up there
production
for a
of
second.
Nonsense in '95. So you're coming up on 30 years. Next year will be your 30th, huh?
And about that.
So you started in '95 as the music director and piano player for Nonsense, and you've been there ever since. So that's
Yeah.
quite a run. You'll be going up on 30 years next year.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable. I mean, I remember my first day as the pianist for Nonsense. The building hadn't been used as a theater in a while, and they had a giant chainsaw and were cutting a door through the booth, through the, 2 feet thick walls on my first day of rehearsal. And I just kept thinking, what have I gotten myself into? And here it is, 2024. And, I moved up in position and the theater company has grown. We now have like 50 employees during the summer when you look at all of our directors, designers, actors, musicians, technicians. We have 50 people up here each summer. It's gotten to be quite a big thing.
That is a big thing. That's a big program to manage. So like I said, you're doing the rep team is doing Kinky Boots, Music Man, Come From Away, and I Left My Heart. So I wanted to ask, how do you pick a season? Is this a fairly typical lineup? And it looks like you pretty much stick to musicals.
We do. We do musicals all exclusively. And that's sort of the biggest challenge for my job is in the off season to plan a season that will keep people coming back, not just our audiences, but also the actors that come back and the directors and designers, a program that people want to work on and people want to see. So, there's always going to be a classic like The Music Man, like Guys and Dolls, like Fiddler on the Roof. There'll always be one of those in the season. But this season, I think we came up with really a perfect balance where we have Kinky Boots, which is modern and progressive, and then Come From Away, which nobody else is doing right now. We're the first company to do this after the national tours and the Broadway run. We're the first regional company to have it. And everyone was super excited to work on this show and present it to our audience.
Come From Away has kind of emerged as kind of a modern classic that a lot of, around the country, a lot of theaters are picking up the baton to do it. What is it about that show that appeals to audiences, would you say?
As we talked about with our actors on the first day, everybody has a memory of 9/11. Everybody has a memory of that day, and they're all different. But what's really interesting to work with this company is some of them were not alive on that day. And
right.
I certainly was. I'm guessing you were. We remember the day vividly. And then to hear this story in Gander, Newfoundland, it's fascinating to study. It's the goodness of people really comes out. The music is fantastic. It's an hour and 40 minutes with no intermission, so it takes the audience really on a journey. Everybody has had a great time working on it. We've only performed it twice so far, and both nights the audiences were electric. I mean, they were glued to the stage, which is very exciting for everybody.
That's great. And, Come From Away sometimes can be done fairly in a kind of a minimal set, with just a bunch of chairs. What's your setup look like for your production?
Yeah, if you go to any of our socials, we've leaked some pictures of the set. We always do that, put up some production photos. This one is pretty minimal, but I think it's really beautiful. It does have 12 chairs, 3 tables, and those chairs get assembled into a plane and a bus and 2 buses and the American Legion Hall and a school gymnasium. It's much more theatrical in what asks everyone to imagine versus our Kinky Boots, versus our Music Man, which is a little more literal.
Great. So, as far as getting actors in, where do the actors and the directors and the crew come from? Are there some locals, but mostly brought in? Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's mostly brought in. Each February, we do auditions in Denver, in Chicago, in New York, and we see 2,000 people, 2,500 people to pick our company of 20 actors. And then we interview directors and designers from around the country. And then this year, for the Music Man, as you can imagine, there's a number of children in the show. Right. And so those are definitely local. The littlest of kids are from the local area. There's a couple kids from Denver that come up to play like featured roles, Winthrop in The Music Man and Amaryllis, and the two little boys in Kinky Boots come up from Denver to do those featured roles. And there's some of the adult actors are from Denver as well.
Right. And yeah, I was looking at some of the bios, and it looks like some of the actors, of course, return year after year.
That's really one of my goals when I took over this artistic director job, is to kind of come up with a stable of people that we like working with, that the audiences like their work, and enjoy being with the company, enjoy being in Grand Lake. And it's really a pleasure to bring them back, to build the relationship with them, and audiences know them too. Even the lighting designer, audiences get to know the lighting designer because he's been back now for 5 years. So that's really a pleasure as well.
Okay. Hey, tell me a little bit about the audiences. I know Grand Lake is a big summer spot, for lake activities and things like that. So you've got people who come in. Do you draw many from the Denver metro area, or who's in the seats?
Yeah, each year at the end of the season, we look at the demographics to see where people came from. And it's kind of an even split. There are our local audience that come from Grand County, that come from, Grand Lake, Granby, Winter Park, Fraser. There are a good percentage that come from Denver and the Front Range. And then there are a lot of them that are tourists who plan their vacations around our rep schedule. So we'll come to Grand Lake for 3 days or 4 days so they can see our 3 shows, boom, 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 one each night. And that happens year after year. Families tell us that's why they come to Grand Lake. So you're right. The town right now with the holiday coming up is exploding with tourism. And then at night they come to the theater, and it's fantastic. And they eat in the restaurants and stay in hotels, and it's a good economic driver for the town.
I bet, yeah, because, Grand Lake in the winters, it's kind of known as like a snowmobile place, is it not?
That is exactly it. We do a couple events in the winter season. We do 2 shows in December, 3 New Year's Eve. So 3 events in December, a couple events in the shoulder seasons. But it is much quieter in the winter. Much quieter.
Right. And do you live there year round?
I do not. I'm here from mid-May until October hits.
Okay. Where are you the rest of the year?
I live in Chicago.
Oh, okay. Great. So it must be nice to come to the mountains every year, kind of like, like the National Repertory Orchestra or Creed or some of these. There's a lot of programs around Colorado that operate like that.
I think personally, for me, it is the perfect arrangement. I don't know. I mean, being in Grand Lake in the summer, where this morning it was 45 degrees, and back home in Chicago, it's 90 and humid. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah. So I know you've got a cabaret coming up. Do you do some one-offs like that throughout the summer as well, or is it just this one?
Yeah, the one that we call cabaret is our one gala fundraiser for the year. So we have an orchestra of 16. We do a special one night only concert, and it really is a fundraiser. The tickets are $175 each. We'll have dinner catered, and there's a silent auction, a live auction, and that event, it really keeps us going for the year. And then we do some really super informal, what we call late night in the lobby cabarets. We'll just launch those probably 2 days before they happen. Invite audiences to stick around. If the show comes down at 10:30, we maybe do a half hour, 40-minute little casual in the lobby cabaret, put together by the actors, material that they choose. Kind of anything could happen on those one-off events. Those are super casual. We usually advertise those on our social medias.
So Michael, a lot of theaters around Colorado and around the country have, the pandemic really disrupted a lot of things, and some of them are still kind of trying to get back to where they were before. What has the Rocky Mountain Repertory Theater's program look like? Is it pretty healthy?
It's funny. In 2020, it hurt us, but it didn't kill us, which was really gratifying. Our supporters came through and kept us going. And it's been a steady growth since then. So I think like a lot of other organizations, 21, 22, we're improving, but we're not nearly at the levels that we had been pre-pandemic. Last year was pretty good. This year so far is looking great. Like it's been a 4-year regrowth, getting back to where we were before. But I think we are pretty healthy right now, and that's great. Last summer, believe it or not, we had a COVID event. We had to shut down for 4 performances. That was really difficult. Out of our company of 40 people, 12 people were sick at one time.
Right. And that knocks out all the shows, right?
Yeah. So we had to shut down for 4 days. And that's really hard, and we really weren't expecting it. We thought we were over it. But it hit us last year. And, we're just trying to be prepared for it, but hopefully we're on our way back to a, super healthy position.
That's great. Yeah, I've asked a lot of theaters about this, and it really kind of depends on where they are and what their programming's like. And it would seem like a program like yours is maybe a little bit insulated just because of the nature of it, with a kind of the touristy focus to the audience that's still going to be coming to Grand Lake and making Rocky Mountain Repertory Theatre part of their summer.
Yeah. Yeah. So we hope that the upward trend continues.
Well, Michael Querio, so nice to talk to you. And so Rocky Mountain Repertory Theatre has Kinky Boots up, as well as Come From Away and Music Man. And so later in the summer, they'll be doing a Tony Bennett retrospective, Lift My Heart, and all kinds of stuff going on up there this summer. So if you haven't been up to Grand Lake, it's a beautiful drive certainly from the metro area and anywhere else, and some great stuff going on up there. So Michael, thanks so much for being on the OnStage Colorado podcast, and best of luck and breaking legs this summer.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
That's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much to Michael Querio for joining the podcast to tell us all about Rocky Mountain Rep up there in Grand Lake. And so what's coming up next week on the pod, Tony?
So as I mentioned, next week up on the podcast, we'll have my interview with April Alsop, who is the composer and producer of the musical, Band the Musical, which tackles the polarizing debate around gender. It's going to perform locally at Vintage Theatre before going to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And in our conversation, not only do we kind of dig into the creation of the musical, but April actually plays snippets of some of the songs live for us. So it's a really fun interview and a chance to kind of hear some of the music before maybe you go out to see it at Vintage, or if you're in Scotland, go see it there.
Absolutely. That sounds great. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio stuff. Let other theater lovers in your life know about us, and be sure to check out all the reviews, news, other podcast episodes, and our full statewide theater calendar on the website at onstagecolorado.com.
As always, we really appreciate you tuning into the podcast. Please rate the show on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you're listening now. And if you do, we might read it out on the show.
You'll be famous.
Indeed.
All right. Thanks all for listening. I'm Alex Miller.
And I'm Toni Tresca, and we'll see you at the show.